Alrighty, hello YouTube. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cryptic Coil, and in today's video, I am going to show you my horror DVD collections. The reason why I want to do this is because one of my favorite YouTubers, Cody Leach, he did one of these videos, and even though it was like extremely long, it was one of his highest viewed videos. And then one of my other favorite YouTubers, her name is what is it, Sista Pam. She did a video like this just yesterday, and I watched it and I really enjoyed it. And then it just occurred to me, like, this is something that people enjoy watching, and I was like, yeah, and I can totally see why. The only thing is that I am gonna have to take my earbud out from time to time, get up and walk away, and grab another stack. My place is a mess. Like, my living room is a mess. There are tripping hazards everywhere. I apologize for that, but I'll get through this the best I can. Now, I made some effort to organize all of my horror DVDs into some kind of an order, but it's not going to be perfect. So let me go ahead and take the earbud out, walk over there for a second, and grab that stack. The first stack that I want to show you is my horror that is like for kids, I guess. And by kids, I mean anything that's horror or horror adjacent. That's PG-13 or below. So give me just a sec. And okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Wow, that almost took 30 seconds. So, let me throw the PG-13s towards the bottom of the pile, and I'll just do the stuff that's like obviously for like kids, stuff that's like less than PG-13. All right, so start with the TV series on DVD. So I have Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? This was one of my favorite shows ever, like when I was a kid, and it remains one of my favorite TV shows, even though I'm an adult. I still watch these all the time. And luckily for me, I have Paramount Plus where you can find this. And if I ever have to save money for some reason and cancel my Paramount Plus, I can just watch it on DVD. And so that's really cool. Then I have this other Are You Afraid of the Dark DVD that I bought used from a comic book shop many years ago. And it's got a couple of, it's got like 6 episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I think that was before they released the whole series on DVD. And so this is another one that I have. Then Are You Afraid of the Dark has had kind of a resurgence in recent years, but instead of putting out a whole season, what they've done is they've done a mini series where it's like one continuous story where the stories bleed into real life. And so here's one, and it's called which one was this called? I don't know, but I call it the Mr. Top Hat miniseries, and then this one is the Ghost Island miniseries, and they were both really good. They were both a pleasure to watch, and just it it makes me feel good to see that the show has lived on and it's evolved, and it speaks to the new generation. I am by no means like woke or even left wing or anything, but in this one, there was a boy who was coming to terms with his sexuality, and it wasn't like explicit or that overt, but it was obvious. And I thought that was actually, kind of cool, because, growing up, some of my friends that, were going through something like that, they didn't have anything representing them in media. And I think that it was done, really well. And I think that, there are probably some, children who are probably, hitting puberty or whatever, who would really appreciate to know that it's normal enough for them to, have that going on with their own self, and that it's represented in something like this. So I thought that was pretty cool. Um, let's see. And oh my gosh, I just absolutely loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? I found this. This is R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour, and I actually just watched it like last week or the week before last or something. And I'd seen it before, but I think I might have been hammered when I watched it the first time because I didn't remember it all that well. But then when I started to rewatch it, things started to come back to me. And this was pretty well done. I mean, it's got that R.L. Stein sense of campiness, that we all loved as children, and that we loved the nostalgia flavor as adults. But it was, really cool to see something a little bit more modern, something that, had that classic R.L. Stein flavor. And it was pretty well done. Well, this is from 2007. In 2007, I would have been 21. So by now, this is probably considered old school, but it felt a little bit more modern to me. Uh, but I really enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun. And then, of course, I have my, Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. Uh, if you want to know how old I am, I saw this in theaters when I was in second grade, and I remember just thinking, "Wow, that is the coolest thing ever." I always loved The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then I have The Corpse Bride, and I remember it not quite enjoying this quite as much as The Nightmare Before Christmas. I think I saw this when I was 19, maybe 20, and I think it's about time for a rewatch. Let's see, what else do I got? Okay, I got Coraline, and is this Tim Burton or is it not? Because it it says from the director of The Nightmare Before Christmas, but it doesn't have Tim Burton's name on it, but it's got that Tim Burton flavor to it. Anyway, Coraline was pretty dope. I saw this in my mid 20s, I think, and that was the only time I ever saw it, but I remember it pretty vividly. And it was actually a little bit genuinely scary. So that was pretty cool. And of course, I have Hocus Pocus, again, another movie that I saw in theaters. I think I was in third grade when I saw this in theaters, and it was so good. And I think it aged really well. I heard that part two wasn't good. I remember they were coming out with a part two, and I remember feeling kind of ambivalent about it. I didn't know how I should feel about it, but I figured I could let other people watch it for me, and if they give it a good review, then I can go see it. And I haven't heard anything good about it. Then I have this, and this was a made-for-TV movie, and it has Nick Carter from the Backstreet Boys. He plays a jock, who's also a bully, and it's a retelling of Sleepy Hollow, and I enjoyed it personally because I mean I enjoyed the story of Sleepy Hollow, but then I let a buddy of mine back in the he was my best friend in high school, and then when we got to our early 20s, he moved back to town, and he moved in with his mom, and she lived out in the mountains, and she didn't have internet or cable or anything like that. But she did have a TV and a DVD player, and he wanted to borrow some movies, so I just loaned him some so he could watch them at his mom's place when he had some downtime. And this was one of the ones I loaned him. And when I went to go pick up my movies from him, he just looked at me and started shaking his head. And he goes, "Oh wow, this one, this was really something." Like he did not dig it at all, but I did. So, I mean, do with that what you will. All right. And then I think this is the last PG movie that I got, and it's the classic Beetlejuice. My copy is the 20th anniversary deluxe edition. I haven't seen this movie since elementary school, and I know that part two just came out. Cody Leach has already done a review on this movie. I haven't watched it because I didn't want spoilers or anything like that, and so I figured this is worth a rewatch pretty soon. I mean, Halloween's coming up, and I'm starting to, watch more movies and stuff. And I'm going to try to start reading books again because I've been slipping on that for a while. All right, so now moving into some of the PG 13 stuff. I got 13 Ghosts. Again, another movie that I saw in theaters when I was either in middle school or high school. I think I was in middle school when I saw this. And I know I saw it one more time in my late teens when I was just out of high school. So I think this one is also worth a rewatch. And it also has Matthew Lillard, doesn't it? Yes, it does. So it's definitely time for a rewatch on that one. And then I've got Edward Scissorhands, which I know isn't exactly horror, but it's kind of horror adjacent because I was a little kid when this came out. I mean, like kindergarten, first grade, something like that. And I remember the way he looked kind of scared me a little bit, but then I realized he was nice. He just looked scary. So I consider it to be horror adjacent, not quite horror, but close enough. And then Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Okay, another classic. It's been a couple years since I've seen this movie because I had COVID and I had a quarantine, and so I just stayed home and ordered Uber Eats every day and just watched a bunch of movies. And this was one of the ones that I decided to watch again, and I feel like it aged really well. I mean, the nostalgia in this is so delicious. Just everything about it just really takes me back to the 90s, and I really miss that time. I wish I could have been a little bit older. Like if I could have been a teenager in 1990 instead of 1999. I think I would have had a lot of fun in the 90s. But being a child, in the 90s was fun too. Because I was young enough to enjoy like Power Rangers and Captain Planet and stuff. And then again, not exactly horror, but kind of horror adjacent. Bedazzled, starring Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley. And good gosh, Elizabeth Hurley is like one of my biggest celebrity crushes of all time. Okay, let's move on. So that's about all I got, in my kids section or PG 13 and under. Let's see, what do you guys want to do next? I can't hear you, but I am open to suggestions after I take a little sippy sip of a little something something. Here's to you. Okay, so how about we do TV shows? Okay, so I've got my Buffy and my Angel TV shows or seasons on DVD. So that's Buffy season 1. Okay, I'll just go ahead and put that back now. I got Buffy season 2, Buffy season 3. I got Buffy season 4. This season, I feel like Buffy season 4 gets a lot of hate. I think that a lot of people didn't care for the storyline, but a lot of people agree that one of the very best episodes from this series, and maybe even one of the best TV episodes out of any show ever, came from this season. It was called Hush, and it's because there was these entities that appeared called the Gentlemen, and they came and they took everyone's voices away, so no one could speak, and so people had to communicate without being able to speak. And that was a really good episode. The storyline was great. The aesthetics was wonderful. I mean, one of the coolest TV episodes I've ever seen from any TV show. And I think it's about time for me to rewatch Buffy, because it has been a long time since I've rewatched Buffy. I remember back when it was on, I started to get into it towards the end of its syndication. And then I'll finish showing you these, and then I'll finish that story. Okay, then I got Buffy season 5. This one was this one was cool. It got a little weird. It got a little weird. It was supposed to end at the end of this season, but it was still so popular and it was still making a lot of money that the network and the director and the producers and everybody wanted to try to milk it a little bit longer. Sarah Michelle Gellar was wanting to move on with her career and start getting into movies because she was becoming an A-list celebrity. And they decided that maybe they could do 2 more seasons. And Sarah Michelle Gellar had agreed to it. And it kind of ran off the rails, but I think everyone tried their hardest to, keep it good. And I like the way it ended. I do. So I'm not mad at the decision to extend it for another 2 seasons. And I wouldn't mind it if they did a comeback. They don't have to bring Buffy back, but if they made another show in the same universe, centered around another Slayer, I dig it. I can't say Slayer without throwing the horns. But I also got season 6. I do not have season 7. I I didn't make the most amount of money in my 20s, and I had to sell my stuff from time to time to make ends meet, and I had to sell my original Buffy DVD collection at one point, and I'm starting to recollect a lot of things. I'm in my late 30s now. I do a lot better for myself this day and age, and I typically have money left over after paying my bills. So that's why my whole channel is really centered around my own sense of consumerism. And then I have Angel season 5. I do see these at thrift stores from time to time, and I need to remember what I have. I need to do a better job of knowing what I have and what I don't have and what I need, and that sort of thing, so I can complete the collection, because I would love to re-binge that series. All right, and then my TV show collection, and I know that's not exactly horror, but it's horror adjacent. Okay, it's close enough to horror, so I don't want to argue with anybody about stuff like that. This is the only DVD I have of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, and it looks like it's got 4 episodes. It's got Treehouse of Horror number 5, 6, 7, and no, it's got number 5, 6, 7, and 12. I'd like to collect more of these because as a kid, I really enjoyed the Halloween episodes of The Simpsons. And, it had an Are You Afraid of the Dark kind of feel to it. I always dug it. Then I have this really old TV show that I picked up at Walmart. And I think that it might have been, was it Rod Serling? No, this was a TV show that kind of predated The Twilight Zone. And The Twilight Zone, I think, is probably my favorite TV show of all time. And I do have it on DVD, but I have it on burned DVDs. And then it's available for streaming on some platform. I don't remember what it was. I binged it when it was on Netflix. It's on something. I think it might be on Paramount Plus. I'm not sure, but I saw it available for streaming recently. But this one is called The Very Best of One Step Beyond, and it's very similar to The Twilight Zone. It's got 50 episodes. I remember watching it and not in my late teens, early 20s. Like I might have been 19 at the youngest, 21 at the eldest. And I remember not quite enjoying it, but now that I'm older and my tastes have evolved and changed and perhaps even matured, I should give this another try. Okay, then lastly, as far as my TV shows are concerned, I have all 7 episodes or all 7 seasons of Tales from the Crypt. So that was season 1. Then I got season number 2, season number 3, season number 4, season number 5, and season number 6, and season number 7. Okay, this show is very nostalgic for me. Growing up, my father was in the military and he was gone. He was deployed quite often, and quite often over the summers. And that's when this show was in syndication, and it used to air on HBO. And my mother would allow me, and I think it aired on Saturday nights. And even though I was young, I mean, I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old. So that was like just before elementary school and throughout elementary school. My mother used to stay up and watch it, and she would let me stay up and watch it with her. And it was like one of my favorite shows when I was a little kid. There was even a Tales from the Crypt cartoon for kids, and I know I know they have it on eBay, and I've been meaning to pull the trigger and buy it. I just haven't. But I think that's the only one that I still need. And I think that the show might have had a resurgence. I think it's currently in syndication, if I'm not mistaken. If someone could let me know in the comment section below if I'm correct about that, I'd really appreciate it. And I'd also love to find out what platform is it available on, because I'd like to, see new episodes of Tales from the Crypt. Okay. All right. Let's see. What do I want to do next? Okay. I'll be right back. Give me another couple seconds. I'm going to grab the stack over there that I sorted out that was based on books. It's also going to have all my Stephen King movies. So I'll be right back. All right, and I'm back, and I thank you for your patience. I know that this isn't the most ideal way to operate a YouTube channel, and I really appreciate you guys. I really think that I probably, even though I'm one of the smallest YouTube content creators on the platform, I genuinely think, and even though I have a very small audience to go with it, I think that the audience that I do have, you guys are so cool. If you go through my videos, I don't have any negative comments. So, like, everyone is just really cool and supportive, and I just want you to know that I recognize that and I appreciate that about all of you. Okay, let me have another sippy sip, please. Again, to you guys. All right, so these are all, books that, or I mean, so movies that are based on books. So I have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, starring Robert De Niro. And gosh, what year did this come out? 1994. I remember when it came out. I wanted to go see it in theaters, but my parents didn't exactly want to. So I have it on DVD. I've had it on DVD for years. And the reason why I've never seen it is because I keep meaning to read the book and I never have. Then I found this like maybe a year ago, and it's based on the Bram Stoker story, The Mummy. And this is another one that I want to read before I watch. So I've been slacking. I wish I knew where the heck I put my Dracula, the one with like Gary Oldman. I don't know where that DVD's at, but I know I own it. I just don't know where it's at. Okay. I have Dean Koontz's Hideaway. This was a really cool movie. I remember this one came out, I think, just before she did Clueless. And I remember seeing the previews. And I also, growing up, my father pretty much only read Stephen King and Dean Koontz. And I remember he was deployed when this came out. And I wanted to go see it, but I my family just never did go out to go see it. And because my father had read Dean Koontz, I was asking him about it, and I was like, they made a movie out of one of his books. It had something to do with a man who like kidnapped a girl and took her into a tunnel. And my father was like, I don't remember reading any Dean Koontz book like that. Well, I never. I do have the book. I have it in hardback. I think it's a first edition. Haven't read it, but I have seen the movie. And Alicia Silverstone plays a grunge chick. Totally different. To her character in Clueless. But yeah, well, her hair was a little too glorious for a grunge chick, but she rocked the flannel. She was into Pearl Jam. She played a grunge chick in this one, so that was pretty cool. Then I have American Satan, and I feel like this movie is really underrated, and I know it's gotten some hate, and I feel like a lot of the hate is really undeserved. But American Satan is based on Faust, and I thought it was really good. I mean, it's got Andy Biersack from Black Veil Brides, one of my favorite bands. It's got Olivia Culpo, is that her name? I think she dated like Tim Tebow. It's got Bobby from Sons of Anarchy. It's got Andy McDowell from A Clockwork Orange. It's got Denise Richards, Bill Goldberg, and Ben Bruce from formerly, he just left Asking Alexandria, but he was one of the founding members of Asking Alexandria. And I got to see Black Veil Brides and Asking Alexandria live together in concert. I never got really into Asking Alexandria, but I'm a huge Black Veil Brides fan. All right. Then I have The Hunger by Whitley Strieber. And I don't have a copy of that book. I know that the Bookubus picked one up fairly recently, I think within the last year. This is one that I've been keeping my eyes open for when I go hunting. Not a great movie. Not everyone will enjoy it. I enjoyed it because I think it was more made for people like me than perhaps for you, because I think that you have to be like, goth and really into vampires to appreciate this movie for the cinematography and the soundtrack and stuff like that. It wasn't great at all, but I mean, the cinematography was amazing. And when the movie opens up, there's a song by Bauhaus that's playing. And even though Bauhaus isn't one of my favorite bands or artists or anything, I do have a lot of nostalgia and fondness for them from my early, or from my late teens and early 20s, going to goth clubs and hearing Bauhaus played. And my goth friends from back then who were diehard fans of Bauhaus, and it's got David Bowie, it's got Susan Sarandon. Um, it, it I watched this movie recently, and even though it wasn't great, I just really enjoyed it. And a couple years from now, I'm probably gonna itch to rewatch it. And then I think the last movie that I put in this stack is going to be Valentine. This is another movie that I saw in theaters when I was a kid. And I feel like this is a really underrated 2000s slasher. Did this come out in the year 2000 or 2001? This came out in 2001, and it's got David Boreanaz from Angel, one of my favorite actors. It's got Denise Richards and Katherine Heigl. Great cast, great aesthetics throughout the movie, good cinematography. I really enjoyed a lot of the kills. Um, I know the movie kind of had its problems. I know that the villain, there were some problems around the villain and things like that. But oh gosh, it was I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. All right, what stack do I want to do next? Okay, how about my hate to keep you guys waiting. I really, really do. Oh, I'm not even done with the stack of movies that was based on books. Okay, so I have this Masters of Horror DVD based on Clive Barker's story, Valerie on the Stairs. I have no idea. My Clive Barker book collection is really coming along. I have no idea what book this is from, but it's based on a story by Clive Barker. It was done by the Masters of Horror Festival. I haven't seen it yet, but it's only 60 minutes long. What year did this come out? 2007, huh? Wow. Okay. That's pretty interesting. And of course, I have Interview with a Vampire by Tom Cruise, or by Anne Rice, starring Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Antonio Banderas, and Christian Slater. Oh, and a young Kirsten Dunst. This is another movie that I've rewatched in recent years, and even though it wasn't quite true to the book, if you just judge it for what it is as a movie, I mean, it's one of the best vampire movies ever, ever. Even though it wasn't true to the book at all. But I mean, not really. Okay, and so lastly, I have my stack of Stephen King movies. Okay, so where is it? Okay, so I have two copies of Storm of the Century. Okay, so I have this copy right here, and then I have this other copy that has 7 bonus movies, and I haven't seen any of these other 7s. Sorry, I have like this itch at the bottom of my nose, and I really hate to scratch it while I'm on camera because it's having to do that makes me feel really self-conscious, but I can't help it. It's an itch at the bottom of my nose, and it's driving me crazy. Please don't judge me. All right. There are 7 bonus movies in this copy of Storm of the Century, and I have a feeling that they're all going to be like low budget, like B movies. But one is called The Triangle, and it has to do with the Bermuda Triangle. One is called Frozen in Fear. One is called My Sweet Killer. And this is probably a movie that even if you haven't seen it, you've seen it. It's about an ex-mental patient who becomes obsessed with a beautiful woman who, well, I guess this beautiful woman committed self-deletion, but I've seen other movies based on a similar premise. Okay, then there's one called Lurking Fear, which I guess is either a zombie or a vampire movie. Probably, I don't know, could be either. Then there's one called Butchered, where a bunch of high school seniors are partying on some island and things get bloody. Then there's one called Final Remains, where four college students who think they are making a harmless midnight stop at the mortuary, because, that's what you do around midnight. Well, they get caught in the middle of a deadly and twisted encounter. And then there's another movie called Followed Home, where four. Sorry, I gotta see what. Okay, all right. I think hopefully that's all right. Then there's one called Followed Home, where four young adults witness a deadly attack during a weekend trip to the mountains, but the tragic experience continues as the killer follows them home. Okay, so that sounds like a really fun slasher. I probably should give a few of these movies a watch. Okay, and then of course, The Green Mile. Okay, I have that one. That's a great movie. I have Salem's Lot, which I have not seen. I think I did see it, but I was like in first or second grade when my father was watching it. But this is a movie, or I've been meaning to read the book for a while. But before I read that, I need to reread Dracula. I want to reread Dracula, then read Salem's Lot. Then I can watch the movie. Man, that itch is killing me. Okay. Then I got Dolan's Cadillac. I remember my taking a road trip with my father, and he told me all about this story. This is one of the stories that he had read from Stephen King that stood out in his mind. And I always wanted to read it, but I never got around to it. And then they came out with a movie, and then we watched it at home. 1408. Okay, I think this one comes from the short story compilation Everything's Eventual. This movie is so good. It was genuinely scary. I watched it in my 30s at night by myself with the lights off, and I think there was a scene where I actually got off the couch and sat on the floor to continue watching it for some reason. I've only seen it once, but it's worth a rewatch. Then I have the remake of Pet Cemetery, which I enjoyed. I haven't seen the original Pet Cemetery since I was a child, like a small child. But I enjoyed the remake. I thought it was well done. It was genuinely scary. I haven't read the book, but I did enjoy this remake. And then Pet Cemetery 2, I enjoyed it. It had a young Edward Furlong. It had his name was Captain Hatley, the captain of the guard from the Shawshank Redemption. He was the main bad guy. This was a good movie. It also had that song Pet Cemetery by the Ramones in the soundtrack. Cody Leach has criticized this movie because it wasn't as serious as the first one, and it was a bit more campy. It was a bit more campy, but I have a place in my life and in my heart for camp, and so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but just know that I think the fan base is a little bit divided. Since Pet Cemetery 2 is a bit more campy, some people don't like it for that reason, whereas I do like it in the camp that comes with it. I also have this six pack, this six film collection, and it's got Apt Pupil, which was really good. It has David Schwimmer, aka Ross from Friends. It's also got Bag of Bones, which I think I have the book, but I've never read it. And this was really good. I think that Bag of Bones was a pretty underrated movie. I can't I can't speak on the book, but the movie I think is pretty underrated. Then it's got Christine, which I haven't seen since I was like, I don't know, 12, 13. It's probably worth a rewatch. It's got The Dark Tower, which I saw once. I feel like it was more sci-fi than it was horror, but it was good. I haven't. I gave up on The Stand. I tried reading The Stand when I was in high school, and I couldn't get into it, but the prequel, yeah, there is a prequel to the Dark Tower series and a prequel to The Stand, and it's called The Eyes of the Dragon. And it was nice to see some of the Easter eggs, like Randall Flagg and Roland. It was nice to see some of the Easter eggs. And then Secret Window starring Johnny Depp. Okay, that was a pretty good movie as well. And then it's got Stand By Me, which a lot of people didn't realize was a Stephen King movie, and it also ties into the It universe. Okay, the body that they were on, journeying out to go find and collect the reward for, the body of that person was someone who was fleeing Derry, Maine, because they felt like too many weird things were going on in Derry, and they were trying to get out, and then they died. And the kids in Stand By Me, when they set out to go find that body, that's who the body used to be. Then I'm almost done with Stephen King's. So I have Desperation. Again, kind of low budget, kind of campy, but I really enjoyed it. I brought it to work and loaned it to one of my coworkers who's read a lot more Stephen King books than I have. She really enjoyed it too. Then I have Pet Cemetery, the original. Then I have Doctor Sleep. This is one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, this has got to be in my top 20 favorite movies ever. I've seen it like 5 times already, and I'm probably itching to rewatch it fairly soon. Then I have Stephen King's Rose Red, which I've never seen. This is like something that I want to watch like soon, because I typically enjoy all the Stephen King's movies. And so this is one that I do want to watch like pretty soon. All right, what do I want to do next? How about I put a stack together of what I consider to be classic slashers. So let me grab that one next. Okay. So I guess like not everything in here is gonna be a slasher, but I think that these are like considered classics or whatever. So the first one is really old. I bought this when I was like 22. Still haven't watched it. It's been 16 years, and I guess this is a film from 1958. It's in black and white. It's only an hour and 8 minutes long. It's called The Screaming Skull, and I think that this is also available for streaming on Paramount Plus at the moment too. But now that it's Halloween season, I think that this is going to be on my to be watched list. Okay. Then I have the Final Destination series. So I have the first 4 films in one deep collection. And then I have part 5. And I actually just binged this series within the last couple of weeks. And I really enjoyed it. I remember the first one when it had first come out. I think that they used to play it on like HBO or Showtime or something. And I'd seen it at home with my family. And then I saw part 2 right around the time that my friends graduated high school. I had dropped out before they graduated, but yeah, so right around graduation time when I was 18, and then I never saw 3, 4, or 5. Well, I rewatched all of them, or I rewatched the first 2 and then watched the rest very, very recently. And I feel like this is very underrated as a franchise. I think that out of all the franchises I've ever seen, this has the best kills. Really enjoyed it. And I love how they tie into each other. Just so cool, so cool, so well done. Let's see, what else do I got? Okay, there's the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. It's got part one, part two, and part three. I just did one of my most recent videos on my channel is actually my review of I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. And I enjoyed this one. I saw the first two in theaters when I was a kid. Um, and I really enjoyed watching the third one, even though it was really low budget and definitely the weakest. I think that they put some effort into it under the constraints that they had, and I recognize that and I appreciated it. Okay, I have Candyman. I haven't seen this since elementary school either. I need to rewatch it. Then I have the original Black Christmas and I have the remake. I have not seen these, but I do plan on watching them both when the holiday season arrives. Poltergeist. So I have not seen the original Poltergeist, but there was one Poltergeist movie that was shown on TV back around 1990, 1991, maybe 1992 at the latest. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and they showed it on TV. I don't know if it was on Cinemax or HBO or whatever my family had. I know we had HBO, but my mom used to watch it, and sometimes when I would watch it around dinner time, there was I don't know which Poltergeist movie it was, but people would explode, and that's all I remember about it. And I would always lose my appetite. I've always enjoyed horror. I was naturally inclined to enjoy horror when I was a kid. And I don't think I've ever been traumatized or truly scared or truly frightened by a movie. But I remember there was a film within the Poltergeist franchise that used to make me lose my appetite if we watched it while I was eating. And I think that's the most severe trauma I've ever suffered from a horror movie. I think this is the remake of My Bloody Valentine. I've only ever seen the original once, and I don't have it on DVD anymore. That was another thing I had to get rid of one time in my early 20s to make ends meet. I had to take it to like Hastings or GameStop or something and sell it for a couple bucks. I have John Carpenter's The Thing, which again, I just haven't sat down to watch. I've gone through phases in my life where I was only into vampires or where I was only into psychological thrillers. And this was just something that was never on my wavelength, even though everyone tells me it's one of the best movies ever and I should totally watch it. And I plan to soon. Okay, then I have, I'm going to go ahead and put that. I have a stack that's just for vampires. I'm going to put this one in my vampire stack. I'll have to do something with that. Okay. So then I have my Nightmare on Elm Streets. So I have the first one on DVD. Then I have part three, and these are by far my favorites in the whole franchise, even though I love almost all of them. I don't have part two. I remember hating it when I was young. Uh, I think that the first time I saw it and the last time I saw it, I was 18. So, I mean, 20 years ago, and I remember hating it. And so I didn't have it on DVD. Then I have my Leprechaun collection, and this has all the Leprechaun movies except for the recent made for the Sci-Fi channel movie. And I really enjoy this franchise. I know not everyone does. I know it's not exactly a. These aren't exactly good movies. I really liked the first one with Jennifer Aniston, even though it's been a lot of years since I've seen it. But I know I've seen it like 3 times. I don't know if I remember everything correctly. I thought part two took place back in time somewhere, and it was okay. I'm wrong. And then part three, I thought was Leprechaun in Vegas, which I enjoyed. Leprechaun in Space, I remember enjoying it. I know it was bad, but I thought it was like still good. Like, yeah, it's bad, but I like it. And I'm not even calling it so bad that it's good. I remember liking it. Okay, Leprechaun in the Hood, I feel like it gets a lot of undeserved hate. Okay, Leprechaun in the Hood was dope. He rapped. Okay, he rapped. Okay, and the fact that, these like rappers, I don't know if they were rappers or not, okay, but they turned his gold into bling. I thought that was like a perfectly fitting thing to put into this franchise. Okay, I think Leprechaun in the Hood was actually good, and I think that it just gets a lot of undeserved hate. Now, Leprechaun Back to the Hood, I've actually never watched, but I need to. And now that spooky season is upon us, I should prioritize it. I should watch Leprechaun. I got to rewatch Leprechaun in the Hood and watch him rap again because that was a catchy chorus. Leprechaun in the Hood, up to no good. Okay, and even like, the female backup vocalists and backup dancers, that they put that, nice little touch on the track. Okay, I unapologetically like that movie, but I need to rewatch it and then watch Leprechaun Back to the Hood, and then Leprechaun Origins was just atrocious, just absolutely awful, absolutely awful, not good. All right. Oh wait, I wasn't even done with my Nightmare on Elm Streets. My apologies. Then I have this collection with number 5, 6, and 7, and then it's got Freddy versus Jason, but I also have Freddy versus Jason by itself. Wow, do I really not have Nightmare on Elm Street 4? I guess I'm missing Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Part 2. I think I can live with missing Part 2, but I really wish I had Part 4 because I really enjoyed that one. That was the one where the final girl got all the talent and, powers from her friends, like the guy who was good at martial arts and stuff like that. I'm just sad. I'm just sad. Like, okay, okay, all right. And then Freddy versus Jason, which I consider to be, another Nightmare on Elm Street film. Yeah, it had Jason, but I felt like it was more centered around Freddy than it was Jason. I felt like Freddy was kind of the main character, and Jason was kind of the bad guy in that movie. Then I have 7 of the Saw films in one collection. Then I have Halloween 1 and Halloween 3, and these are the original Halloweens, not the Rob Zombie ones, which I saw in theaters and did enjoy. Then I have this 3 set collection, and it's got Halloween H2O, Resurrection, and Halloween The Curse of Michael Myers, which I saw back in the 90s and early 2000s when they were new. But I don't have a lot of sentimental value with this franchise. It just wasn't really my franchise, but now that spooky season, Halloween, is upon us, I'm going to binge these. I just binged Final Destination. I'm going to do Halloween next. Okay, then I was never the biggest fan of the Friday the 13th. I've seen them all. I can get some enjoyment out of them, but it's just not really my franchise. But I recently watched the first or the remake from 2009, and I really, really enjoyed this one. This is my favorite. And I mean, there was like a couple that I liked from the original canon, but I really love this 2009 remake. And then I have Evil Dead. I don't have Evil Dead Part 2, but I do have Army of Darkness, which I think is probably my favorite. It is my favorite. Who am I kidding? The one liners like where, the princess like turned into a zombie or skeleton or something and told Ash like, "Don't you love me?" And he's like, "Baby, you just got ugly." Okay, that was a good one. And like, "Listen up, screwheads. This here is my boomstick. Shop smart, S smart." Love it. Okay, never gets old. Um, eh. I don't have an American Werewolf in London, but I do have an American Werewolf in Paris. I recently rewatched this as an adult, and it was like, wow, not as it's not as good. What I mean by not as good is, okay, when I was a kid, I loved this in like sixth, seventh grade, middle school, loved this movie. As an adult, I rewatch it and I'm like, oh wow, it's pretty campy. It's a lot more campy than I realized it was when I was a kid. It just felt modern because it was the 90s, at the time when it came out and when I saw it. But then I rewatch it and it's like, wow, it's got some 90s flavored cheese on it. But it's still good. It's good for me. Like, I could rewatch it again and enjoy it, enjoy the heck out of it. And then this probably doesn't have any business being in the classic stack, but it's another one from the 2000s, and I recently watched this one for Old School April, and I absolutely, it wasn't good. I mean, it was a bad movie, and it just wasn't good. I mean, it had Eliza Dushku, which made it worth watching. It had Casey Affleck and Wes Bentley, who I enjoy, but just not a good movie. Although I do enjoy the nostalgia from the late 90s and early 2000s that it offered. So moving on, let's look at my stack of vampire movies. So I have this one. This is a low budget independent film, and it's called Midnight Kiss. And I think that this is from either the late 80s or the early 90s. And I watched this one in recent years when I had COVID. I really liked the bad guy. I think his name was Gregory A. Greer. I think that was him. He was, had like, an old school hair metal, old school thrash metal kind of aesthetic. And he was the vampire bad guy. He was pretty cool. I guess he was a musician. He was like in an 80s metal band. I have no idea what year this was made, but it was either late 80s or early 90s. And it was like, kind of a detective romance vampire story. If you're into vampires and you don't mind, low budget B movies, I'd say give it a shot, but for everyone else, it's probably not for you. Then I have this one. I picked it up from a thrift store recently, and it's called Rise Blood Hunter, and it stars Lucy Liu, and it's a vampire movie. And this one also came out in 2007, so it's almost 20 years old. I haven't seen it, but I want to watch that one soon. And then I have the Blade trilogy: Blade 1, Blade 2, Blade 3. I enjoyed this trilogy. I feel like Cody Leach said it recently, but Blade doesn't get the credit that it deserves for kicking off the whole, Marvel comic book superhero movie craze. I think that Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, maybe X-Men probably get a lot of the credit for that, but Blade actually came out just a few years before those movies, and that's what really set it off. And I grew up a comic book geek, but only because in the 90s you had the X-Men cartoon, you had the Batman the Animated Series cartoon, and you had the Spider-Man the animated cartoon. So like, X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman. Well, Spider-Man and X-Men were Marvel, and Blade was a character, reoccurring character on that Spider-Man the Animated Series cartoon from the 90s, and that was right around the time that the Blade movies came out, and so I knew who Blade was, and then I was when I became a teenager and I was able to make some of my own money. That's when I really got into comic books, and so these are very, very sentimental movies to me. Then I have this one that I found at a thrift store not too recently, and it's called Countess Dracula, and it's based on the true story of Countess Elizabeth Bathory, which is one of those historical events that kind of inspired Bram Stoker to write Dracula. And it says that it's a vampire collection. I haven't watched it, but I picked it up fairly recently from a thrift store, and I plan on watching it eventually. Then I have where did it go? Where did my Oh, okay, there it is. So I have The Lost Boys, which is one of my favorite movies ever. I used to date a chick who looked just like Star, the character Star, and she looked a lot like her mother. And when people used to tell my ex girlfriend, "Oh, you look like Star from The Lost Boys," her she would say, "Yeah, I get that all the time, and so does my mother, and so did my mother when she was when the movie first came out." So that was pretty cool. This was a really, you know, The Lost Boys is a great movie, but it's pretty campy, and I know a lot of people who don't like it as much as I do. And then I saw The Lost Boys Part 2, The Tribe, and I watched it wanting it to be good. Wanting it to be good. It wasn't, but it did have a really cool kill. Then I have Dracula Untold, and I, I really liked it. Okay, there was a scene that actually made me cry. I don't cry very often, and I don't cry during movies very often. But the thing that gets me is if harm happens to a child or if harm happens to an animal. That's what gets me in the feels. And there was the scene where Dracula almost had to turn his son over to the army. He was just a little kid, and his wife is sitting in. They rode in the carriage to go drop off their son because their son was being drafted into the military, and he was young. I mean, he was like 10, 11 years old, and Dracula's wife, Mrs. Dracula. She was in the carriage crying because she was about to turn her son over, and it was a malicious intent. That's why he got drafted, and Dracula was about to turn his son over, and at the last second he couldn't do it, and he said, "Screw it!" Pulled out a sword and slew the soldiers that had arrived to, collect his son. And that movie just, the tears just, like, because it had to do with a child, and that's what gets me in the feels. So, I really enjoyed this movie. Then I've never seen this one, but I remember in middle school, this was available for rent at Hastings, and I used to always think about renting it. Never did. and I have it on DVD. Still haven't watched it, but I want to. Then 30 Days of Night, starring Josh Hartnett. This was based on a graphic novel. I remember in high school, a friend of mine was a fan of the graphic novel. He was excited about the movie. I still haven't seen it, but I think I'm going to pretty soon. Then I have this one. It's called Suck. And I picked it up fairly recently from a thrift store. And I'm interested in watching it because I love vampires, but it's got Malcolm McDowell again from A Clockwork Orange, and it's also got Alice Cooper. So this is one that I'm pretty interested in watching fairly soon. And then lastly, for my vampire movies, where did my Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one with what's his face, Gary Oldman, go? Where did it go? That's one that isn't available in this stack right now, but I have this three movie collection, and it's got Blood Angels, which was not a good movie. I've seen it like at least twice. Not a good movie, but it's got a lot of hot chicks as vampires, so it's worth it to me. Then it's got one called Vampires Out for Blood, which I have not seen, and then it's got Succubus Hellbent, which I know I saw, but I was in my 20s. I was hammered. I think I was, sitting at home drinking or something when I was like maybe 22, and got kind of wasted and watched it as I fell asleep. I don't remember it very well, but I bet you it wasn't any better than Blood Angels was. But I feel like movies like that aren't made for the masses. They're made for people like me, and that's okay. All right. Let's see what else do we got? Oh, as far as vampire movies go, I should have probably thrown these in. Van Helsing, starring Kate Beckinsale and Hugh Jackman, which I know aren't exactly horror. It's more like action, and but it's horror adjacent. I remember enjoying it. I remember watching it once, and there was a cartoon movie where Hugh Jackman voice acted for Van Helsing, and they had to protect Queen Victoria. I guess this isn't that same edition. And then I have two of the Underworld movies. I recently rewatched part one. And then I have Underworld Evolution, which I believe was part three. And I've never seen parts 4 or 5, but I'd like to. I'd like to rewatch, or I'd like to binge the entire franchise eventually. All right, let's see. What else do I got? I know this video is long. I'll move on to this stack. Okay, right here just to get it done, get it out of the way. So I have the director's cut of Dark City, which I know a lot of people categorize it as a sci-fi movie, but I think it's horror and sci-fi. I think it's like a bi-genre movie. I think this is also 90s, and I remember really enjoying it. This is another one that I want to rewatch soon, see it as an adult, see what I think of it, but I know that as a teenager, I thought it was brilliant. Then I have the Elvira movies. So I have Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and then I have Elvira's Haunted Hills. And I've seen these movies. I've rewatched them as an adult, and I know that there are some things in Mistress of the Dark that could be considered problematic, like her using her sex appeal to lure teenage boys into doing things for her, like work on her house. And I mean, I don't care. I still like this movie. I mean, I don't approve of that by any stretch of the imagination. I promise you. I'm not about that, but it's Elvira. If I was a teenage boy and she wanted something, I'd be like, yes, ma'am, anything. And then Elvira's Haunted Hills. I remember not liking it. I know there was a really silly scene where everyone burst into song and dance, and I just thought it was really bad, but it might have been so bad that it was actually good. I should rewatch it, see what I think now that I'm older and much more sophisticated as I drink my Miller Lite from a Batman koozie. All right. This is something that's on my to be watch list. Something that I plan on watching super soon. I love that holographic cover. It's called Midnight Movie, and it's a slasher. I guess it's from 2008. I found it at a thrift store recently. I guess it won an award for the best cinematography. And so even like bad movies, if they have good cinematography, that's something that'll make me feel like, I guess it was worth, my time, at least just to see the aesthetics from the good cinematography. Then I have this movie, and I didn't realize it was so old, but it has Bruce Campbell, and it's called The Woods. I remember seeing the previews for it at the movies. I was there to watch one movie, and then this was in the previews, and I didn't realize that this was as old as it is. What year is it from? It's from 2005. So, I mean, it's practically 20 years old. And I thought it was a lot more recent than that, but I found it at a thrift store recently. And I never did get around to seeing it, but it does sound good. Then I have Seven, and I guess this is one of those movies where some people like to grasp at straws and say, oh, it's not horror, it's psychological thriller. And then Cody Leach says that it is horror because when you watch it, you feel horrified. I haven't seen it since I was a teenager. I remember when it came out. I remember my parents and their friends were talking about it. I remember it was, a big deal at the time. And then I saw it for myself when I became a teenager. A buddy of mine was doing some acting classes, and I was helping him practice one of the scenes from it. But I need to rewatch it. Then I have my Crow movies. Okay, I love The Crow. The Crow is arguably my favorite movie of all time. But I know that and there's just so much nostalgia from the '90s. The soundtrack, Brandon Lee. I mean, the aesthetics, the cinematography. I love this movie, but apparently young people don't really like it. They're One of my coworkers is a few years younger than me. He missed it. He never saw it. He has no sentimental attachment or nostalgia for this movie. I let him borrow it recently, and he watched it, and he said that it was worth a watch, but it was full of '90s cheese. I don't feel that way. I think it's one of the best films ever made. And then now that that new Crow movie is out in theaters, and now that everyone is doing movie reviews on it, some of the young people who watched the original to prep for the remake, uh, they don't love it as much as like me and my generation do, like the millennials and Gen Xers. So I don't know. Maybe it's a product of its time. I don't know. Breaks my heart though. Let's see. Then I have The Crow, City of Angels, which I remember fondly from my childhood because my parents rented it on VHS from Hastings, and we watched it as a family. And it had the Yellow Ranger, Trini, or well, the actress's name, may she rest in peace, Twee Trang. It had her in it, and she did do a martial arts scene where she fought the crow. This movie wasn't really that good, but the cinematography was amazing. A lot of the people that worked on this did the best job that they possibly could have done to make this a good movie. I think that there were a little bit of problems with the lead actor. Not exactly his fault, but the person who made the casting decisions, probably should have picked someone else. And I know that Harvey Weinstein kind of didn't threw a monkey wrench in there, and the film that this was intended to be is not the film that we got. And I'm stealing that verbiage from Cody Leach, and I learned that information from Cody Leach, but I don't think that the actor, he wasn't horrible, but because he is foreign and had an accent, it was difficult to hear him at times. But the aesthetics and the cinematography were amazing. So this is a movie that I've seen a few times, rewatched it again for Old School April, and it's a movie that I could probably rewatch a few more times throughout the course of my life and enjoy it. Okay, then there's The Crow Salvation, and Cody Leach agrees with me on this. Very underrated film. I genuinely believe that if this movie is just so overshadowed by the original, that this movie was just destined to be underrated and underappreciated. But in another universe where we never got the first Crow movie and this had come out, this would be a huge cult classic. Then I have Creepshow, which I haven't seen since my early 20s. I really want to rewatch it. It's a Tales from the Crypt, kind of movie. I really want to, it's not a Tales from the Crypt like movie, but it's kind of done in that style. I really enjoyed it. There was a local band here. They were kind of a horror punk band. They were called Creepshow. I I want to rewatch this pretty soon. Then I got my Zombielands. Okay, I loved the original Zombieland. I loved this movie. I feel like it was made just for me. I thought everyone did so good. Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin. They all did so good. It was so well written, so well made. And it took forever for part two to come out, but when it did, it was worth the wait because part two was amazing as well. They could do so much with this intellectual property. They really could. They could have completely different characters who don't know each other, who aren't even tied to these two movies. They need to make more of these. Like they could make one, Zombieland Seattle. They could make Zombieland New York City, Zombieland Chicago, Zombieland San Antonio, preferably. Okay, they could do so much with this IP. They really could. They should make more. Okay, speaking of zombie movies, one of my all-time favorites, Return of the Living Dead 3. Okay, I remember I found out about this movie in my early teens. I rented a movie and I was watching the previews, and there was a preview for this movie. And I remember thinking like, oh wow, the girl is like one of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen in my life. And I ended up buying it on DVD in my late teens just because I remember thinking that the girl in the previews was just like so beautiful. And, it had to do with zombies. So then I found out that, oh my gosh, the girl from this movie is the mom from the OC. She played Misha Barton's character, Marissa Cooper's mom. Her name is Melinda Clarke. She also played in the Spawn movie as kind of like that dark mistress character. And she also played a dominatrix in like CSI Las Vegas or something. And Melinda Clarke is just always a pleasure to watch. My nostalgia or my fondness for Melinda Clarke actually comes from the OC, but also from this movie. Just really underrated gem. Really under the radar, underrated gem. Then I have this movie, and there's a sticker on it that says "Rare Find." I found it at a thrift store. It's called Haunt. I think that this does have some, more well-known actors because there's an actor in here named Jackie Weaver, who's from the Silver Linings Playbook. It's called Haunt. I think it's a haunted house story. I haven't seen it yet, but I picked it up at a thrift store fairly recently, so that's something that I'd like to get around to watching soon. I found this at a thrift store as well. It's called Ring of Darkness, and this has some pretty mainstream personalities in the cast, like Ryan Starr from American Idol and The Surreal Life. It's also got an actor from General Hospital. I thought that show was over. Okay, but this is from 2003, so it was still on at that time. But this does sound pretty good, and it's something that I'd like to watch fairly soon. Ooh, 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 ooh. Repo the Genetic Opera. I love this movie. I've seen it like 3 times or something. It's got Giles from Buffy. It's got Sarah Brightman. It's got Paris Hilton. This is a really good movie. They ended up doing another movie with the same plot, but it wasn't like a campy musical. It was actually more serious. It was more like a psychological thriller slash horror movie with the same premise, where some pandemic, creates a need for people to have organ transplants, but they have to pay a lot of money to get the organ transplants. And if they ever default on their payments, the repo man comes. And this one was just like really cool. I love the soundtrack. Loved seeing Giles in it. It was really good. Oh, and then the main character, the actress, she actually has a huge goth following because she played in this movie, even though she's not goth herself. Then I have this movie from the early 2000s, early or mid 2000s, mid 2000s. It's called Boogeyman. I remember when it came out, I wanted to watch it, never got around to it. One of my coworkers who liked horror movies watched it, really liked it. I watched it a year or two ago, something like that. It was okay. It was worth a watch, but it could have been better. It had a great plot, great storyline. It could have been done better, but it did yield some good things. I bought this from Walmart, and I guess it's available for streaming on Shudder, and it's called Party Hard, Die Young. And this is a movie that I think that it was originally written in German or something. I think it was German, but it's like a overdubbed and subtitled. And so an English speaking audience can still watch it and understand it. And it was pretty good. It's not like a groundbreaking movie. It's not going to reinvent the wheel or evolve the slasher genre or anything like that, but it's going to take everything that we love about the slasher genre and do it well, with a pretty cool story, good kills. This was really worth a watch. I really enjoyed it. Not one of my favorites, but I do recommend it if that means anything to you. All right, let's see, what else do I got? I'll grab this stack over here. I should have put this in my classics, but Sleepaway Camp. I tried to watch it not too long ago, but I ended up falling asleep just because I was super tired, so I didn't get to finish it. But that's one that I want to watch really soon. I don't know if this is considered horror or not, but I got Darkman and Darkman 2. I remember my parents rented these movies in the 90s, and I remember thinking that it was cool when I was a kid, and then I rewatched them as an adult, and I realized that they were kind of campy, kind of cheesy. But I mean, if you have a taste for that sort of thing, these are, pretty cool movies. And then I got Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. May he rest in peace. Dalton from Roadhouse. I don't. This isn't really horror, but it's got ghosts. Okay, so close enough. It's horror adjacent. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, I love this movie. Okay, Witchboard, starring Tawny Katane. Yesterday I wore my White Snake shirt. Oh, I should have picked it up off my bedroom floor and threw it back on for this video. Okay, Tawny Katane, she was David Coverdale's girlfriend and the video vixen in all those White Snake videos from the 80s. She was also on the cover of Rats Out of the Cellar because she used to date Robin Crosby. She played in this movie. It's called Witchboard. It's kind of a haunted house movie, but it's because they play with a Ouija board. And it's really, really good. And Tawny Katane did a really good job in it. I love this movie. Okay, I have the Blair Witch Project around somewhere, and then I have Blair Witch project or Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows. I It's been a long time since I've seen this movie, but I remember there was this really, really gorgeous goth chick in it, and it also had Marilyn Manson's "The Beautiful People" in the soundtrack. I need to rewatch this one. All right. And then I got The Hitcher. And now this is a remake, and it's got Sophia Bush, who have a lot of fondness and nostalgia for because in high school and like in those college years, I really enjoyed One Tree Hill, and she also played in another horror movie where there was a video game based on Countess Elizabeth Bathory, and Sophia Bush played a goth chick in that movie. But she was in this movie too, the remake of The Hitcher, which I haven't seen, but I do want to watch soon because hitchhikers and horror go hand in hand, just like babysitters and horror. Then I've got I don't know if people consider this to be a horror movie, but it's kind of slasher adjacent. It's not truly a slasher film, but it's kind of close. And it's got a young Mark Wahlberg and a young Reese Witherspoon, and this was really good. And I believe that it's still available for streaming on Netflix at the moment. So if you haven't seen it, this has a lot of 90s goodness, just really nostalgic 90s candy. And I think it was really well done. It's probably more psycho thriller suspense, but it definitely leans into horror. There are, some kills, just really good. It's about young love, young people coming of age and, first love. And, you know, um, Mark Wahlberg's character becomes a little too obsessed with the love interest played by Reese Witherspoon. Just really, really good. A couple of Bush songs are on the soundtrack, like Machine Head and Come Down from 16 Stone. Really good movie. And then there's this one. This was a low budget movie, but I thought it was well done. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. It's been over a decade since I last rewatched it, but I've loaned it out, and everyone that's watched it thought it was really good. Some people can't stand the CGI, which I think is a silly complaint, but really good story. Really good story, and I really enjoyed this movie. The story is basically Spawn, except it's like this sexy woman who I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to give anything away. I've said too much. Really good movie. There are some movie reviews on YouTube, and all the movie reviews that I have seen for this one give it pretty positive reviews. So I'm not the only one that enjoyed it. And then I found this one at a thrift store recently. It's called Angels Fallen. It's about I guess the some guy named Gabriel, which is of course an archangel. A retired demon bounty hunter returns to the Dark Land when his deceased wife's prophecy comes true that four angels will come to destroy mankind, only to find a mysterious fifth angel that he must protect from a vicious demon horde. I know there's a metal band called Fifth Angel. It's been a long time since I've read the Book of Enoch, and I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up evangelical. So there might be some references that I might not be totally educated on, but I have read the Book of Enoch, and I do know some of the lore surrounding this type of. I'm going to call it mythology, but not with any intention of disrespect. I did not like the movie Legion, but if you've seen that movie, this seems like it's kind of got the same flavor. I'm not itching to watch this one, but it does sound interesting. All right, then I'll grab this stack. This is my Wes Craven movies. So I have this Wes Craven four movies in one collection, and it's got Dracula 2000 and Dracula 2 Ascension. I saw Dracula 2000 in theaters. I remember thinking it was okay. I didn't love it back then. I wonder how I would like it now. Then there's Dracula 2 Ascension, and I have no idea what this one's like. And then there's Dracula 3 Legacy, and then there's Wes Craven's They. And I remember not liking They. I thought it had like an ambiguous ending, like a very unsatisfying conclusion when I watched it as a teenager. I don't think I care to rewatch that, but you know, I love vampires, so I could watch the Dracula movies in it. Then I have the Scream original trilogy in one collection. And I mean, I've seen these movies 100 times. I love Scream, in case you can't tell. Very fond of this franchise and the nostalgia. I think that out of all the horror franchises, this is just the most well done. Although, Final Destination, kind of, in my opinion, Final Destination is super underrated, and I think it gives Scream a run for its money. I just came to that opinion recently, okay? But I just love Scream. And then I have My Soul to Take. Is this Wes Craven? Yeah, this is Wes Craven. I've only seen it once, and I think I was in my early 20s. I enjoyed it at the time. No, I was like mid 20s, I guess. I enjoyed it at the time. I don't think that my tastes have matured into what they've become now. So this would definitely be worth a rewatch. And then I've never seen this one, but The Last House on the Left. I From what I hear, it's pretty similar to I Spit on Your Grave, where a woman gets SA'd, assaulted in a sense, and there's like revenge surrounding that. I saw the original I Spit on Your Grave when I was like 15, and that, scene, it bothered me then. Looking back on it, it bothers me now. That's another thing I think that's another like a trigger of mine, I guess. And I don't want to call it a trigger, but it's just something I don't care to watch. So, I don't know. I should watch it. I should. All right, I'm almost done. I think I got two more stacks. Wow, a 2 hour long video. So there's not really a whole lot more organization left. Well, I guess there is. Okay. All right. Let me grab this stack. Okay, these are all like collections, I guess. So this is a double feature, so two movies in one collection. It's Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. I haven't seen the Tales from the Crypt movie in a long time. That's something that I'll be very interested in rewatching. Then I have this 15 film horror pack, and I see this at thrift stores quite a bit. That's where I picked it up. I picked it up from a thrift store in recent years. It's from 2012. It's got a movie called Beneath the Mississippi. It's got another movie called The Vampire Conspiracy, which I've seen, and it wasn't very good. But it had vampires and it had hot chicks. Then it's got a movie called Room 33, another movie called Watch Me, another one called Hindsight, another one called Marked, another one called Grave Mistake, another one called Slaughtered, another one called Skeleton Man, another one called Final Spawn, another one called Ghost Encounters, The Queen Mary, another one called Witchcraft 13, Blood of the Chosen. The Witchcraft franchise, those are all really low budget films, and they have a pretty cool premise, but like the stories are not very well told. The stories aren't as good as they could have been if they were written by a writer with more developed talent for writing. I've seen a number of the Witchcraft movies, and they're just not good. I mean, if you're a glutton for punishment like me, maybe they could be worth a watch, but I don't care to rewatch any of them ever again. But I have a feeling that 13 movies into the franchise, Witchcraft 13 might actually be an okay one, because they put it in another collection that I have that I'll be showing you in a moment. But Witchcraft 13, the subtitle is Blood of the Chosen. And then another movie called Curtains, another movie called Dust Devil, and then another movie called Venom. And I think that Venom is like kind of a slasher movie that has a little bit of a cult following. So I don't know. Um, I'd like to watch that. Okay, then I picked up this 4 film pack not too long ago. There's Pumpkinhead 2. I'm not sure why they put part 2 and not part 1. I wish they would have made it a 5 pack and put part 1 if they were going to put part 2, because it also has the original Leprechaun starring Jennifer Aniston. Side note, if I ever meet Jennifer Aniston, the one thing that I'd like her to autograph for me would be my Leprechaun DVD. Anyway, they didn't put Leprechaun Part 2 and not Part 1. They put Part 1. So why did they put Pumpkinhead 2 and not Part 1? And then it's got Wishmaster and Wishmaster 2. So I have that. Then I have this 4 movie collection called Witches and Warlocks. And it's got a movie called Bay Coven. Again, Witchcraft 13, Blood of the Chosen. They have The Pit and the Pendulum, which was an Edgar Allan Poe story. And then one called Midnight's Child. And again, babysitters and horror. So an evil nanny puts a family under her sinister spell, one they must break if they hope to survive her stay. So that actually sounds like a really good movie. I think that the two from this collection that I'd really like to watch is Witchcraft 13. Like, why is this put in more than one collection? Like, was it actually decent? And then, as opposed to the other ones that I've seen. And then Midnight's Child, I'd like to watch that one because I like babysitters and horror. Then I have this movie that I bought from Walmart years ago, and it's a Gore House Greats collection. It's got 12 movies, and they're all really old. There's The Blood of Dracula's Castle from 1969, and it's got John Carradine from Kung Fu. It's got another movie from 1970 called Blood Mania, and another one called Brain Twisters from 1991. Another one called The Devil's Hand, which is a black and white movie from 1962. Another one called The Madmen of Mandoras from 1963, which is also in black and white. And I guess it was also known as They Saved Hitler's Brain. So that was another title that this movie was known by. A 1969 movie called Nightmare in Wax. Another movie called Prime Evil from 1988. Another movie from 1976 called Satan's Slave. Okay, that sounds, kind of sexy. I swear to goodness, I am not a Satanist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not religious either. But that sounds like that would be a pretty cool movie to watch. Another movie from 1972 called Stanley. Another movie called Terrified from 1963 that's also in black and white. And another movie called Terror from 1978. I'm trying to see if I recognize any of the actors or actresses. I don't. And the last movie is called Trip with the Teacher. And that's from 1975. And I feel like I've heard this name before, Zalman King. I haven't really watched any of these movies. But I do see this one at thrift stores from time to time. Then I have this one called Classic or 50 Movies Classic Features, and these are horror classics, and they've got movies featuring Vincent Price, Bela Lugosi, and many more favorites. And this one, I think I bought this one from Walmart as well, but this one was like affordable, and then they had one for $50, and I was like either too broke or too cheap to pay for it. Oh, this one has the Screaming Skull. I showed you that one. This one has the 1925 black and white Phantom of the Opera. It's got the 1922 Nosferatu. It's got the 1934 Maniac. It's got The Last Woman on Earth from 1960. The Last Man on Earth as well, starring Vincent Price. So this has, some good movies on this one. House on Haunted Hill from 1959, the black and white one with Vincent Price. It's got the 1920 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, starring John Barrymore. It's got a Bela Lugosi movie called Black Dragons, which I've never heard of. Yeah, so it's got some. Oh, it's got White Zombie, the 1932 Bela Lugosi movie. That's the movie that White Zombie, the band, named themselves after, and then Kirk Hammett from Metallica has a signature guitar, where the movie poster for White Zombie is printed on the front of the guitar. So there's some really good movies in this one. Then I have this 20 movies collection called Undead, the Vampire Collection. And it's got movies featuring Bela Lugosi, John Carradine, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Vincent Price. And it's got movies like Atom Age Vampire from 1960, which is in black and white. It's got a movie called The Bat from 1926, which is a silent black and white film. Then it's got the remake from 1959, which is, again, in black and white. Blood of Dracula's Castle, a film from 1969. Was that also in this? I don't think so. It's got a movie called Crypt of the Living Dead from 1973. It's got a movie called The Devil Bat from 1941, which was black and white. It's got a movie called Horrible Sexy Vampire from 1970. It's got a movie called Horror Express from 1972. It's got The Last Man on Earth again. It's got another one called Nightmare Castle from 1965, which is also in black and white. The 1922 Nosferatu movie. It's got an Prime Evil, which what was that in this one? Oh, okay. So this was the one with the blood of Dracula's castle, and then what was the one that I just Prime Evil? No, Prime Evil was in this one, right? Anyway, let's move on. Terror Creatures from the Grave from 1965, also in black and white. Again, the vampire bat, but this is the 1933 black and white one. The Vampire Happening from 1971. Vampire's Night Orgy from 1973. The Werewolf versus Vampire Women, a movie from 1971. And The Witch's Mountain, a rated R movie from 1972. So I have that. And then I have this 5 film set, The Prophecy Collection, starring Christopher Walken. I haven't seen these movies, but I hear the first 3 are really good. And then I have this, and I think that this is more thriller movies. One is called Copycat, one is called Diabolique, one is called The Crush, starring Alicia Silverstone, a very controversial movie, something that this day and age we rightly would consider problematic. The things I heard about that movie, man. Okay, and then one called Pacific Heights. Although it's always a pleasure to see Alicia Silverstone, so I'd watch it just for her. But anyway, this is my last stack of movies. Okay, I don't know what this one's about, but it's called The Dark. I picked it up from a thrift store fairly recently. Oh, here's the original Blair Witch. I found it at a thrift store. It's brand new, it's still in the cellophane. I found Wolf's Creek, which I have not seen, but I hear is okay. Vacancy, I only bought it because it's got Kate Beckinsale. The Boy, I know part 2 is available for streaming on Netflix. I don't know if I want to watch it. I think that part 1 was pretty good. I did enjoy it. I don't feel like part 2 is necessary, but I did enjoy The Boy. If you haven't seen it, I liked it. There was a twist that I didn't see coming, and it, the jump scares were pretty good. Cabin in the Woods, which I just watched for the first time fairly recently, and oh my gosh, I wish I would have seen this movie sooner. I could have used some of this in my life. This was good. Good job to Joss Whedon. Frailty, which I only found out about recently because Cody Leach did a movie review on it, and I watched it. I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as he did. He highly recommended it. I was watching it and I kind of saw where they were going with it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And just because I had, issues, stemming from my childhood, the movie kind of bothered me. And then when I started to get into the movie, I was like, oh God, please don't let it end this way. Sure enough, it ended that way. So I kind of predicted. There were a couple of twists that were done well, but I saw them coming. And it's because I was emotionally involved in the story, and I didn't want it to go that way, and it went that way. I recommend this movie too. I don't think I enjoyed it quite as well as much as Cody Leach, but it was good. And Matthew McConaughey and Bill Paxton did a great job. The boy who played or I think it was the eldest child. He did a good job as well. This was another one of those After Dark Horror Fest movies. It's called Slaughter. I just watched it the night before last for the first and last time. Um, I'll do a movie review on this one. I will. Uh, Moving on. The first Terminator movie. Okay, so I just rec- recently got reminded through Cody Leach's channel that this movie is actually kind of controversial because some people consider it a horror movie where the rest of the franchise are action movies, and some people say no, the Terminator one wasn't a horror movie, but Cody Leach is willing to die on the hill that it is a horror movie. But I remember when Terminator 2 came out and there was all this hype around it when it was like in theaters and when it first became available on home video for rent and for, purchase on VHS. I remember the adults in my life talking about how they remember the first one, which came out before I was born, and that the first one was a horror movie. And then I have Aliens, which I have not seen, but I know that my parents watched it when I was a kid. I have Your Next, which is a home invasion movie with a really sick final girl. So that was a cool movie. Lord of Illusions, which I guess was it's Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. I know I saw it a couple times as a kid. I know I saw it at least once as an adult. I think that this was available for streaming once upon a time on Netflix in my late 20s, and that's when I rewatched it. But again, I was probably drinking. It was probably came home from work, had a few drinks, watched a movie before I wound down for bed because I had to work again the next day. Watched this movie, and it was pretty good. But I don't remember it all that well, so I want to rewatch it again. Sorority Row, which I saw in theaters when it first came out in 2009. So I think I was still in my early 20s at that time. I enjoyed it then. I rewatched it recently, and I saw some things that I didn't see the first time. How society was a little bit different back in 2009, but it was starting to evolve into what it is now. And so my feelings have kind of changed on it, but it was worth a watch. I mean, just for the horror gratuity, the gratuity that we get from horror movies and slashers, it was, worth a watch, but my feelings have changed on it. I picked this one up. It's called Starry Eyes, and it sounds really good. I haven't watched it yet. I picked it up from a thrift store recently, but if you're aware of the Me Too movement and what all the controversy around Harvey Weinstein, this is kind of a horror movie with that kind of a storyline, and that's why it sounds so good. This one is called The House of the Devil, which I know is available for streaming on Amazon Prime at the moment. Well, I didn't know that when I saw this at a thrift store and picked it up for $2. So that's one that I want to watch, and it's got some reviews on it, from the New York Times and USA Today. So I don't think it's a low budget B movie, but it is from 2009. So that's one that I want to watch pretty soon. And I picked this one up. It's called Death Day. Now, I know that there's a movie that's, pretty popular at the moment called Happy Death Day, and it's a retelling of Groundhog Day, but with a horror movie slasher twist. This is kind of the same thing. I picked it up from a thrift store fairly recently. I tried to watch it, and I could not get past the first 15 minutes because it was so bad that it was infuriating. And it's like, hey, my time is kind of precious. The first 15 minutes sucks. And so I ended up turning it off, and I did not finish. I'll show this one. Okay, this one is called Poison Ivy, The Secret Society. And I think that this is like the third or the fourth movie in that franchise. Now, I don't think I've ever seen the first one, but I know that it's a cult classic from the 90s that, there were some people that really enjoyed the first Poison Ivy. I picked this one up, and the only reason why I picked it up is because I loved one of the actresses in this movie. Her name is Shauna Waldron. She played Becky the Icebox in The Little Giants. She also played Michael Douglas's daughter in The American President. And she played in this, I think it was a made for TV movie on the Disney Channel called Mr. and Mrs. Headmistress, starring Rocket Man, what's his name? Harlan Williams, where there was like an all girls boarding school, and this ex convict just gets out of prison and dresses up like a woman, kind of Mrs. Doubtfire style, and he becomes the headmistress at this all girls private school. So she played in those movies from my childhood, and I had a lot of fondness and nostalgia for her. I also had a crush on her, and still kind of do. She grew up to become a very, very, very gorgeous woman, and I was friends with her on MySpace back in the day. She actually wished me a happy 21st birthday and left a comment on my, homepage on MySpace. That was really cool. And then I picked up this movie, and this movie, I don't know if you. It's another one of those movies where we'd be grasping at straws if we try to decide whether it is or isn't horror or more psychological thriller. It's probably kind of a. I think that the lines between those two genres would be kind of blurred with this one because there are a number of kills, but there's also kind of a soft core corn vibe going on with this movie. A lot of like sex scenes and gratuitous nudity, which I'm not exactly mad at. So, you know, sue me. Then Darkness Falls, which I think is pretty similar to that movie that I showed you, The Boogeyman. I That movie was, worth a watch, but it wasn't exactly my favorite movie, so I haven't seen this one. But this came out when I was in high school, and I wanted to see it then. I have it on DVD. I just haven't sat down to watch it. I picked this one up. This is an anthology. I picked it up from a thrift store, and it's called A Night of Horror, Nightmare Radio, and it's got 8 terrifying tales to haunt your dreams. I picked this one up, like I said, from a thrift store, and it's got some people in here that I've never heard of. I'm not sure. It's not rated, so that tells me it's probably low budget. It's less than an hour and a half long, but I am kind of curious to see if this one is as good as, like, some of the other anthologies that are, kind of cult classics like Trick or Treat, or, Trick or Treat. I wonder if it's anywhere near as good as that. And then the last movie that I have to show you is called All Cheerleaders Die. And I guess it's actually kind of categorized as a horror comedy, but I don't remember it being that funny, because I remember I saw this movie when I was like within the last decade. I'm 38 now. I was like 28, 29, maybe 30 tops when I first saw this movie, because it was available for streaming on Netflix. And so I watched it at home in my living room. And, it was worth a watch. I think it had a really cool story that wasn't told as good as it could have been. It kind of had a little bit of an ambiguous ending where they deliberately left it open for a sequel. And then they never turned it into a franchise. There has never been a sequel, at least not that I'm aware of. I don't think there is a sequel. It was worth a watch. I feel like the bad guy in the movie was a little too over the top and unbelievable. But it was worth a watch. I do think it could have been better. I think that if that IP had been in the hands of the right people, this could have been mind-blowingly good, but the people that are responsible for its creation did the best they could, but it could have been done better. Okay. And that's it, guys. This is a 2 hour long video. This is by far and large the longest video in the history of my channel. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm a little self-conscious, to tell you the truth, but I know that I enjoy a lot of long form content myself. I hope you guys are cool with it. I am. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think of my collection in the comment section below. Any of the movies that I've seen that I recommended, if you've seen them, let me know what your thoughts are on that in the comment section below. And any of the movies that I own that I have not watched that maybe you've seen, share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'd really like to read those comments and take that into consideration when I have some downtime and feel like sitting down to watch something. All right. Thank you guys. Horns up. Peace out.